So behind me is my 2004 Subaru Forester XT. It has a single turbo LS setup in it, and today that engine actually has to come out. And if you've ever wondered how a V8 fits in a Subaru, then today's the day. This is the video for you. I'm gonna show you as much detail as I can about how this engine fits in this car and the things that I did to make it fit with the stock subframe. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've got most of the coolant drained, the radiator's empty, the block is pretty much empty. And I kind of wanted to show real quick, I have shown this in a YouTube short before, but I made this front end so that it was very easy to take the engine in and out many times in a row, because I had to do a lot of in and out and test fit, change something, yada, 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 when I was making this all work. So what I did was a lot of this stuff's just sitting here for show. So you take the grill off, and then you would go ahead and take the headlights out. There we go. So you take the headlights out, and then I modified the core support. I actually cut it here and here and made brackets. And so what I can do now is actually pull this whole, I can pull this whole core support out, which really gives you a ton of access to the radiator and the engine once you remove the radiator. So this just comes out like that. And then there you go. You can see there is tons of room now. Before I start pulling stuff apart, I just want to kind of give you guys just a little look at everything as it is, as the car ran before it gets all pulled apart. So because this is a low mount turbo setup all down in the fog light hole, there's a big scavenge pump up here that pulls the oil up and then into the oil pan. And let's see if I can show you guys. So this is the clearance in between the headers on this side, and it is actually, there's actually a lot of clearance on the sides of this motor, especially compared to the Boxer. Honestly, there is more clearance on the sides of this motor than there was with the Boxer. The only major concern with fitment was really the height of the motor, because as I'll show you as we take it out and as we get under the car, the oil pan is extremely, extremely close to the front subframe. And then one thing that is really, really close to the subframe as well is actually the starter, and it is not trying to focus on that. There we go. So the starter is actually extremely close to the subframe. From this angle, it actually looks like it's touching it, but it is not. There is clearance down there. And then this is pretty much the entire turbo setup right here. The wastegate, dump pipe, turbo, and then cold side piping, intercooler, the other side of the cold side piping, and then right into the intake. Fairly simple when you're just looking at it, but this was a ton of work to try to package this thing to get everything to fit. So the first thing that needs to come off is the turbo and the headers. I am going to try to prioritize showing you guys the more important, more interesting things on this build as far as how it fits and how it goes together. And then I also did want to give a huge thanks to you guys that have subscribed to the channel recently. I've kind of gotten a bunch of people that subscribed all at once, so that's really cool. And there were quite a few of you that responded in the comments to my last video about the questions that I had for the parallel 4-link that we're putting in this car. I really appreciate you guys responding, because as much as I've learned along the way building this car, there is still a lot left that I have to learn and get good at in order to make this thing go as fast as I want it to go. All right, so with that intercooler piping out of the way, you can get a little bit of a better look on how tight everything is clearance-wise. Again, some of this stuff looks like it's touching the car. It is not. There is clearance, but it is really tight. So this is actually a 7875 from Amazon, and honestly, it was really great. Like, I have had no issues with this thing so far. Beat the crap out of it on drag week, and it has been going strong. So I don't plan on changing that unless I start seeing issues with it. And then there's the oil return. It goes right into a little scavenge tank here. And then that scavenge tank goes to this hose right here, that goes down to the scavenge tank. And then that tube goes up to the scavenge pump. So I did have to turn the heater on. Sorry about that noise. It is just way too cold out here. It's January in Pennsylvania, so it's cold. So I just wanted to give you a quick look at the turbo header. It is just using stock exhaust manifolds flipped around. So it's not the easiest thing to take on and off in the world, but it is functional. And then we got the turbo sitting over here. That's all there is to that. And yeah, as you can see, it just uses the stock exhaust manifolds flipped around, and honestly, it worked pretty darn good. That's something that may change when the car gets put back together, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, so now that we got the turbo manifold off and the turbo out of the way, the oil stuff disconnected, we got to start working on getting the wiring undone and the intake off and out of the way as well. And then I think I am going to pop the hood off real quick because that is just going to be in our way at this point. Not the easiest thing in the world to do by yourself, but it's not too bad on this. Luckily, these Foresters actually have aluminum hoods, so they are not really that heavy. Hey, check that out. So much more room for activities now.
Aerobics in here? So many activities!
So I actually have a Haltech Rebel LS running this car, so the wiring harness should be pretty darn simple for us to get out of the way. The Rebel LS has been an awesome ECU to work with. So there's all our injectors unplugged on this side. Do this side real quick. So as you can see in the time lapse there, I got the intake manifold popped off real quick. Super easy to take off. And then we've got the wiring harness flopped right there. And that is pretty much it for up top. Everything up top here is completely disconnected. And I tried to make everything on this thing as easy to work on as possible. So now it is time to actually get underneath the car and start unhooking the various things down there. If I remember right, I think the oil filter has to come off to get this engine out, and I think the starter might have to come out too. I'll kind of remember more once I get under the car. But the weird thing about this setup is when I was putting it together, once I started building the transmission stuff, I started putting the engine and transmission in as one piece. So I never actually pulled the engine with the transmission in the car. So kind of weird, like I actually don't know how this is gonna go. Like, so I don't know if it's gotta be possible, but it might be like a bigger pain in the ass than it's worth to pull the motor as opposed to pulling the engine and trans together. I don't know, we're gonna find out, because I'm kind of curious if it can be done relatively, simply. So I'm gonna get underneath the car right now and show you guys some stuff under there. All right, I'm using my ultra wide lens, so hopefully I can get you a little bit better view on what's going on here. But as you can see, this is the oil filter, and that feller definitely has to come off, because as the motor comes out, it wants to hit those motor mounts that are on the subframe. And then over here, the starter definitely has to come out, because that'll do the same thing on that side. It'll start to hit that motor mount. But yeah, as you can see, and I'm gonna try and get you guys all the way up here, we are talking about probably a 1/4 inch or less of clearance between the oil pan and the subframe. So stuff is definitely tight under here, but there is just barely enough room for it. So yeah, I'm gonna get this oil filter out, get the starter out real quick, and then we can work on getting these motor mounts loose and yanking this engine. All right, so everything's disconnected underneath. Pretty good amount of access to the bolts. Like, sorry, it's not focusing. Oh, I missed one. I'm glad I videoed this, because I thought I got all of them, but there's one more. But anyway, as you can see, there's plenty of room to get those out all the way around, and try not to focus on a lot of this stuff, but doing my best here. There would be another one right there. So quite a bit of access, actually. Sometimes trying to film everything and making videos can be a real pain in the butt, but sometimes it can be a motivator, and sometimes it can save me some frustration by finding a bolt that I missed before I go to pull the motor. So I am a little bit under the weather now, and it is much colder here than it was in the last clip you guys probably saw. We've got about over a foot of snow outside here in Pennsylvania. I'm really not a fan of winter, but when it's dumping a foot of snow outside, I really, really, really despise winter. Got a little bit of tension on the crane here, and now we just have to get to our 2 motor mount bolts, which one is right there and the other is right there. So not too bad to get to either really on these. So I'll pop those out real quick and then we'll see if we can't yank this motor. All right, everything should be free. So let's try and yank this thing. Should come out pretty easily. Yep. It's kind of a weird, like it just got caught. Should be free from the trans unless I missed something. No, it's free from the trans. Okay, I see what's happening. I gotta pull the motor mounts off the motor, and then I think we'll be in business. Let me do that real quick. All right, I took the easier side off, the easier motor mount off, and I think we can get this out now because we can tilt it enough to get it past the flywheel. Yeah, there we go. That was my issue before. It was not making it past the flywheel, which was, yeah, there we go. Now we're completely free. So that was the issue. And there we go. We are fully free. Make sure we didn't forget any wires or anything. Nope, we're good. Leaking a little coolant. That's fine. There we go though, not too bad. Only had to take 1 motor mount off from the engine itself. So not too bad. All right, let's get this on the engine stand and then I can show you a little bit more of the subframe and then the engine as well. All right, we've got the engine on the engine stand and just get a closer look at these motor mounts. So this is the Dirty Dingo motor mounts and it's their hot rod kit that I believed. And this is the Moroso front sump oil pan that I'm using. If you guys do want to know the part number of that specific pan, just drop a comment and I'll let you know. And this is the other part of the motor mount kit, the Dirty Dingo kit. So I just welded it directly to the subframe right where the original Subaru motor mounts would have been bolted in. And then you can see that I've cut some, and you can see some of this was rushed and some of this was kind of hacked just to get this car going. But normally there is a hole here. So there is some part of the subframe that's kind of cut out here, but then I just cut it more and then hammered it down just so it would clear that oil pan. So there's still a lot of meat there. And like I said, there is normally a hole here, just it's not, this isn't beat down this far. Normally the hole I think is like kind of like this area. And so I had to cut that on this side and this side right up to the steering rack. So that oil pan sits like, you know, a 1/4 inch above the steering rack. So that's how I was able to get it to work with the stock front subframe with minor modifications. Looking back at it, I probably now would have figured out a way to drop the steering rack and modify this further, but it's done and it works. So I probably will leave it this way, but we'll see. You never know. All right, so that is going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you got some ideas or motivation or just some entertainment out of watching this video if you made it this far. So really appreciate you guys hanging out with me and making it this far in the video if you did. Please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more about the car in the future. Next video, we are going to be putting our swag off-road tube bender together, and we are going to be hopefully bending up some tubing and trying to start the process of getting a 850 roll cage in this and then starting to build the chassis out. So that's gonna be really exciting. And if I missed anything in this whole process that you guys have further questions about, if you're thinking about doing this to your Subaru or whatnot, anything like that, feel free to drop a comment and reach out and I'll answer as best I can. And yeah, I'll see you guys in that next video, hopefully. All right, see you guys.